The Prince and the Pauper. Mark Twain. Chapter 13. The King is dead. Long live the King. That the same morning Tom Canty opened his eyes when it was still dark. He lay silent a few minutes. Then suddenly cried out happily, "Nan, Bet, come here. Be quick. I shall tell you a wonderful story." "Nan, Bet," a voice near him said, "what will be your commands, your Majesty?" "Commands? Oh, poor me. Say, who am I? Last night you were the Prince of Wales. Today you are Edward, King of England." Tom hid his head among the pillows and said, "So it was not a dream?" "Oh, poor me. Poor me." He slept again, and after a time he had a pleasant dream. In his dream he went home quite happy. His dear mother kissed him and said, "It is late, perhaps you will get up." "Your Majesty?" Ah, they were not the words he was waiting for. He opened his eyes. It was not his mother, but the richly dressed First Lord of the bedchamber. He was standing on his knees by Tom's bed. And the room was full of lords. The poor boy remembered that he was still a king. Tom sat up in bed and looked at this fine company for a moment. Then the ceremony of dressing began. In the beginning, a shirt was taken by the second Lord of the bedchamber, who passed it to the First Lord of Windsor Forest. The First Lord of Windsor Forest took the shirt and passed it to the Chancellor Royal of Lancaster. The Chancellor Royal of Lancaster took the shirt from the First Lord of Windsor Forest and passed it to the Master of Wardrobe. The Master of Wardrobe took the shirt from the Chancellor Royal of Lancaster and passed it to the Constable of the Tower. The Constable of the Tower took the shirt from the Master of Wardrobe and passed it to the Lord High Admiral of England. The Lord High Admiral of England took the shirt from the Constable of the Tower and passed it to the Archbishop of Canterbury. The Archbishop of Canterbury took the shirt from the Lord High Admiral of England and passed it to the First Lord of the Bedchamber, who took it from the Archbishop of Canterbury and put it on Tom. People pass buckets with water like that at a fire, thought Tom. Each part of his clothes went thought this slow process. One lord passed it to another and so on. Tom got tired of the ceremony. He felt almost happy when he at last was his long silk stockings, which began their long way from the second lord of the bedchamber. He knew that the end of the whole business was near. But what was this? The First Lord of the bedchamber received the stockings and gas going to put them on Tom's legs. Suddenly his face got red and he quickly passed the stockings back to the Archbishop of Canterbury and said, "Look at that, my lord." He pointed to something that was wrong with the stockings. The Archbishop got pale and passed the stockings to the Lord High Admiral of England with the words, "Look at that, my lord." The Admiral passed the stockings to the Constable of the Tower with the same words. The Constable of the Tower passed the stockings to the Master of Wardrobe. The stockings passed back along the line of lords who whispered those 5 words to one another. "Look at that, my lord." At last the royal stockings reached the hands of the second Lord of the bedchamber. "God have mercy upon us," whispered the frightened lord. "A little hole to the Tower with the head keeper of the king's stockings." But all things must have an end, so new stockings were brought. They were in good order, they had no holes. So the time came when Tom Canty was dressed and could get out of bed. A lord poured water when Tom washed. Another lord stood by with a towel, and by Tom was ready for the royal hairdresser. At last the whole ceremony was over and Tom looked as pretty as a girl in his beautiful clothes and a cap. He now walked towards his breakfast room. And as he passed the lords dropped upon their knees. After his breakfast Tom was led to the throne room, where he had to be busy with some important questions of the state. His uncle, Lord Hertford, stood by the throne to help him if he needed his help. The work went slowly. Many state documents were read by secretaries. One of the secretaries read a report about the cost of the royal court. The sum was so large that Tom opened his mouth in surprise. He was still more surprised when he knew that the king's servants did not get their money for the last 6 months because there was no money to pay them. So 1,200 servants working in the palace had a hard life because they could not get their money for their work. Then Tom spoke out. "It is quite clear," he said, "that we shall soon go to the dogs if we don't stop spending so much money. First of all, we must find a smaller house. Much smaller than this one. And it is not necessary to have so many servants. Some of them do not do any useful work. We can do their work ourselves. And it is not necessary to live in the palace. I remember a small house that stands opposite the fish market." Lord Hertford pressed Tom's arm hard. Tom stopped and looked around. Nobody showed any surprise at his foolish speech. The business of the state went on. Tom got tired soon. He said to himself, "What have I done that I am shut up here and made a king? Why may I not see the green